What up, my fellow NBA lovers? This is your guy, Marcellus Ease. After this James Harden trade and things begin to settle down and all the hoops and blah just starts calming down a little bit, we begin to notice that the NBA landscape has changed a bit. And I'm pretty sure the Lakers have noticed the same thing. We've seen the Las Vegas odds change on the Brooklyn Nets, and they went from the fourth best to winning an NBA championship to their odds jumping up all the way to number 2. Also, the Lakers were kind of in cruise control this season as a few teams that we thought would challenge them have been going through some struggles. We've seen the Denver Nuggets not be that consistent, the Golden State Warriors dealing with injuries, and they're pretty much a non-factor after the Klay Thompson injury. And then we've seen the Houston Rockets go through that dilemma, sending James Harden away. So they're also a non-factor. And there's a few teams that are in their young gun stage coming up the ranks, aka the Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns, but they're not quite ready yet. So the Lakers were on cruise control up until this trade. Now they're going to talk about LeBron James and the Lakers' reaction, and every once in a while I'll check in.
Well, I think the biggest thing is LeBron is right. Trades do happen all the time, and you can't get caught up and say, okay, this guy went there and that guy went here. I have to worry about what's the focus at hand, and that's getting my team ready to play the Thunder. And although the Thunder is not a great team, but on any given night, you don't play your best. Because like you tell me sometimes, who cares about a Tuesday night? Who cares about a Wednesday night? But clearly the Lakers were focused, and from the opening tip, they approached it as such. But I think also Bron understands, being a part of a big three, how hard it is for those pieces to come together in such a short period of time. And if you look at what happened with him, D. Wade, and Chris Bosh, Skip, if I'm not mistaken, I think at one point in time they were 9-8 in the first 17 games because D. Wade was like, okay, am I going to take it or you going to take it? Or you going to take it or am I going to take it? But we still got to give CB his touches too now because we can't leave him, unnoticed. And so it's a lot harder than people think.
Now, Shannon Sharpe could go in his soliloquy, but at the end of the day, LeBron James and the Lakers, their eyes are wide open right now because the landscape definitely has changed. And they're going to have to reevaluate Kyle Kuzma and Wesley Matthews because they may need a little bit more firing power. Now, I'm not sure if they could still work out a deal for Bradley Beal, but something's got to be in the works. Also, I know in the beginning of the season they were feeling like the king of the mountain, especially with that Dennis Schroeder trade, which was a well-positioned move. But at the end of the day, Brooklyn has a lot more firepower, and we've seen the Lakers struggle at times with three-point shooting.
Especially when you get superstars. D. Wade had won Finals MVP. Chris Bosh was a perennial all-star. LeBron James was who he was, two-time MVP, had gone to the finals. And so, you don't want to step on each other's toes. So it's a lot more, and LeBron understands, it's a lot more difficult than people think. This isn't, one of those video games, Skip, where you just play, well, I'm gonna play with this team and everything's gonna be okay. It doesn't work like that in actuality. It takes time to blend a team together. And so, and plus LeBron's like, I can't worry about what they're doing. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. I just need to make sure that I'm prepared and my team get better and better every time we step on the court. Because, Skip, with the protocols to where they are now, there's not gonna be a whole lot of shoot-arounds. There's not gonna be a whole lot of anything.
And not a lot of shoot-arounds don't benefit the Lakers because, once again, the firepower was always their Achilles heel. And we've seen it play out last season in the bubble, especially with that slow start that they had in the bubble. It was mainly due to shooting issues. But they made it up on the defensive end, especially with Anthony Davis.
Basically, you're just going to be showing up at the arena and just playing. So I don't really know how much film study. Because of, only 10 people in a room at one time now. So the NBA has gotten very strict because of these outbreaks. They postponed a few games. And so it's going to be very interesting to see moving forward. But LeBron should not give it like, oh, they traded, oh, good deal. And just keep it moving.
Now, as you can tell, Skip is about to go ham. But Shannon is definitely caught off guard because, once again, the Lakers are pretty much on cruise control until this trade happened. And now, pretty much, their eyes definitely have been awakened.
Like he did.
Your demeanor and delivery matched LeBron's in the clip we just saw.
Yeah.
AKA, they're all caught off guard right there. That's what Skip means.
You're just dismissing this as it's just another trade. They come, they go. It
Skip,
happens
it's a
all the
blockbuster
time.
trade, but what are you about to? Man, I can't believe that. Man, the NBA shouldn't have let James Harden go to. So is that what you wanted in reaction? You're upset because you didn't get the reaction from LeBron that you thought you was gonna get.
I'm not surprised by this at all because
I wouldn't be surprised behind closed doors if Rob Pelinka is trying to work out, a trade to get Bradley Beal over to the Lakers. Like I said, Kyle Kuzma and Wesley Matthews, those two guys, the Lakers are going to need a little bit more firepower than those two guys to help them out right there.
he is the shrewdest of operators. Trust me, he had thought long and hard about how to respond after the game to the first media question about the blockbuster trade. And I'm pretty sure he decided, I'm not going to continue to fuel the hysteria that is taking the focus and the national spotlight off the Lakers and LeBron James, because that's what just happened. And you cannot tell me that LeBron didn't spend most of his afternoon, if not all of his afternoon, leading up to warming up before the game on the phone with Maverick or Rich saying, what you think? What you think? What you think? Going back and forth about, what do you think?
What are the things, Skip? I mean,
now the reason why Skip Bayless mentioned LeBron being on the phone with Mav and his other friend, Rich Paul, is because LeBron kind of has these two guys as like his confidants. These two guys are pretty much his scouting guys to recruit players to play with him to see who fits in well. And we've seen this dynamic play out in Miami because Rich and Mav Carter kind of served as a medium between LeBron James and the communication with Pat Riley.
They put together two guys that are going to be first ballot Hall of Famers in James Harden and KD. Kyrie's working his way into that discussion.
You don't think LeBron had conversations about, do you think it'll work? What are the problems? Do you think it's going to be an issue
I
or
just
not?
asked you the question.
And LeBron probably mainly asked, what about Kyle Kuzma and Wesley Matthews? We're going to need more firepower than those two guys. What can Rob Pelinka do to get Bradley Beal over here?
What general manager, what NBA player didn't have that?
Thank you. They all did.
Okay.
It was the talk of the world, the sports world yesterday. It transcended NBA. It was the NFL talk of the world. Every NFL player, even those getting ready for the playoffs, you don't think they were buzzing about this blockbuster?
Yeah, Skip,
Will it work?
It's just like everybody was buzzing when Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay. The NFL world was buzzing. The NBA world was buzzing. Mm-hmm. It happens when big megastars move teams. Mm-hmm. This is not you. I mean, you making it seem like this is unique. Was the world not buzzing when?
It is pretty unique because all these guys are really offensively gifted and they're in their primes. So it is unique. Shannon is still fronting here, but I'm pretty sure the Lakers behind the scenes, they didn't have as good of a poker face.
LeBron went to the Lakers. Mm-hmm. Was the world not buzzing? No. The world paused when LeBron James made the decision. Mm-hmm. So you make it.
And also Vegas hit that pause button when they bumped the Nets up all the way to number 2 in the odds to win the NBA championship.
Seems like James Harden doing this is the first time we've got news like this.
No, okay. You're just telling me that LeBron just shrugged it off, and I promise you he did not shrug it off.
How would you have him to respond?
100% agree with Skip.
I don't care how he responds. I was just curious to see how he would. And I thought this was a possibility. I thought he might be a little more generous to them because he likes them and he wants everybody to like him. He wants to be the ambassador for the NBA. I thought he might say it could be a great deal for, AD took the right stance. He said, on paper, it looks great. Well, that's fair. Okay, right. On paper, it does. Now he said you got to go between the lines and see if it starts to work between the lines.
Right.
Okay, that's a fair way to say it.
It definitely is. The Lakers could dominate the Brooklyn Nets down low completely. But when it comes to shooting 2s and 3s, because that's pretty much going to be the exchange, the Lakers are going to come out on the losing end of that. Especially if they fall behind quickly, the Nets could pretty much blow them out and just, leap away from them by just all the 3-point shots that they could make. And the Lakers have no firepower. Well, I should say they don't have enough firing power to keep up with the Nets.
LeBron could have said, "Oh, it's great for the league. It's going to create a lot of attention."
And guess what? Had LeBron said that, you would have said Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant would have never said that. They would have never been so complimentary. So LeBron James...
Well, Michael never thought of himself as the ambassador for basketball. He hated everybody.
Skip, here's the thing.
Doesn't LeBron want to be best friends with everybody he plays?
Skip, whatever LeBron thinks, LeBron James is the face of the NBA, just like Michael Jordan was the face of the NBA. But my thing is for you. If LeBron James had been complimentary of this, you would have said, this is why LeBron can never be the GOAT, because Michael Jordan would have never been complimentary. Kobe Bryant would have never been complimentary. Okay, he says, hey, I didn't get caught up into that. I had to get ready to play a game. And now you say, oh, man, he was there. Oh, just, come on.
He wants.
Shannon is right there. Of course, LeBron James had to play politics. But we also got to evaluate the Eastern Conference. It's not as easy as people make it out to be. When we're looking at the Philadelphia 76ers, the Milwaukee Bucks, all these teams are going to be a possible tune-up for the Brooklyn Nets to get to the finals. The Lakers, on the other hand, their tune-ups going into the finals, it's a possibility it's going to be the Utah Jazz, the Phoenix Suns, the Denver Nuggets. You know, a few of these teams, they have one or two pieces that are missing, and they're at their young gun stage. They're just not quite there yet. So we have to reevaluate these conferences, because it's always said that the Western Conference is the lot harder conference. But right now, there's a few teams out east, especially in the top end portion of the Eastern Conference, that are a lot more difficult than the top end portion of the Western Conference.
To be the face of the league, and all of a sudden he's not the spotlight of the league.
Is he not the face still?
The focus of this league, the new epicenter of the NBA world, is now in Brooklyn. Not in Manhattan, in Brooklyn. I never thought I would say these words, because I grew up with the New Jersey Nets, who were just sort of out of sight and out of mind, and they moved to Brooklyn, and then they ultimately pulled this off.
Well, it was good when they had a doctor.
Okay. Well, when they were in the ABA. Yeah. This is now the total focus of this league going forward is going to be on, will this work or will this not work?
Right.
Exactly. Because the focus of the league before was the Lakers. It was pretty much they had no other competition. How Dennis Schroeder was such a good trade for the Lakers. How did they pull this off? He's such a great fit. And now the narrative has completely changed, and everyone, like Skip said, is waiting to see in the Nets' first 10 games how well is that Brooklyn Nets machine put together, and could it stay well oiled for a whole season?
And they're going to come out here in the middle of February and play a game at Staples, and it will feel like a preview of the NBA Finals.
Well, if they had fans, Skip, can you imagine? If they had fans and the amount of media, it would almost feel like a finals game.
It would.
With the amount of media credentials and the buzz around it, because everybody would have been on location.
Okay.
And also, to think about it, Tyler Hero and Duncan at times in the finals gave the Lakers an issue. And they're nowhere near as good of a shooter as Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, or James Harden. Just keep that in mind.
So, in the biggest picture, LeBron James has the highest IQ in basketball. I think in basketball history, he is already calculating what he's up against. And obviously, injuries can play a part. I'm going to knock on wood. You know, obviously, KD has injury history. Kyrie has injury history. James doesn't have much. But it could factor into this. But if they stay healthy, LeBron has to know he's going to be up against a much bigger challenge if, in fact, he can get through the West to the NBA Finals. Because I'm going to remind everybody, in the bubble last year, he wound up in the finals against an injury-riddled fifth seed that ultimately, starting with game one, when they obviously lost Bam and Dragic, that had to play high minutes a night. Three kids, Duncan Robinson and Hero and Kendrick Nunn, those three played high minutes like 25 minutes a night.
Right.
That's who you got to face in the NBA Finals.
And once again, like I said before, some of those guys gave the Lakers an issue in the finals, even though the Lakers defense was pretty much suffocating. But at times, those guys gave the Lakers issues. Now, it's a possibility that they're going to go up against way better shooters in the finals for this year.
Well, what if it's KD, Kyrie, and James Harden?
Well, Skip.
Won't that be a little different?
Well, here's the thing. Sure, it'll be different. But it's not like somebody just put the heat there.
It would be different if Kyle Kuzma, Wesley Matthews, and Dennis Schroeder, he's not known for three-point shooting. But Kuzma, Wesley Matthews, and Caldwell Pope, they're all going to have to be performing at a high level to keep up with the Brooklyn Nets.
Had to win 4 rounds.
Okay, they
had
did.
to win 4 games each round.
But weird things kept happening in the bubble. And I think they were a weird thing. They just caught fire, and it felt almost like March Madness.
What was the weird thing that happened to the Clippers and why they weren't there?
Okay, they did not want to be in the bubble. That's as simple as that.
And also mental issues. Last season, that bubble came down to the mentality these teams had going in and how well that they could stay oiled throughout the whole thing. The guys have to be operating as a unit and keeping in mind that they have a goal. Now, the Lakers mentally were the best well-oiled machine led by LeBron James. I give them that. And that's why I say it's well-deserving that they won that championship, because they pretty much showed how committed that they were to finish that bubble. And pretty much that whole season, they showed from the very tip-off in preseason and getting into the finals.
What did, we talked about this at length. The Lakers have all agreed they just didn't want to be in the bubble, and they were associating with them and fraternizing with them, and they knew they didn't want to be there.
If you don't mind me asking, if the East is so weak, why are you praising it now? You remember when LeBron was over there and you said the East is terrible? And the only reason
it wasn't terrible is that a lot of guys were in their early stages. They were the young guns. And as soon as LeBron left, a lot of guys started to mature. And then their team started adding different pieces. We saw what happened with Philadelphia. We seen what happened with Milwaukee. Giannis started to mature. We seen what happened with the Raptors. They added one key piece, a.k.a. Kawhi Leonard. And we seen how good that team got. Had LeBron stayed in the East, it's not a guarantee that he would have made the finals. Now, that last year that LeBron was in the Eastern Conference is sort of the same atmosphere that the Western Conference is in this season, where we see a young Donovan Mitchell on the come up. We see a young Devin Booker also on the come up. The Warriors are still dealing with injuries. And the Dallas Mavericks, they're a few key pieces away from being that competing team that can go deep in the playoffs. Unfortunately for them, they were waiting on the Giannis sweepstakes, which that didn't happen. So they didn't spend any money this past offseason on acquiring better talent to put around Luka, but they'll probably do that for next season. And they're also dealing with the injury with KP. So we have to add a little context to the landscape. And the landscape in the Eastern Conference and Western Conference is always evolving, especially in the last 3 to 4 years.
Whoa, Skip.
Okay. So
East,
what?
The East is terrible. If it was a cakewalk then, why is it so tough now?
Well,
Now, that's false. That's narrative. The Eastern Conference was a tough conference ever since Kawhi got there. If you look at the road that the Toronto Raptors had to get through to go to that finals, you can make an argument that that top of the Eastern Conference that season was tougher than the Western Conference. Because I remind you, the Warriors went through the Portland Trailblazers and pretty much mollywopped them. And that's without Kevin Durant and a very thin bench. But that same Portland Trailblazers team that got swept pretty much dusted the Oklahoma City Thunder, which was viewed as being a good team. And in reality, when we look back, the fact that they got knocked out 2 years in a row in the first round, now we grow to have an understanding that that team was overrated. So we have to add some context to the conferences. That Eastern Conference that year that the Raptors had won the championship, I mean, we have to go back and examine how good that Philadelphia 76ers team was. Remember that they had Jimmy Butler on that squad. And also remember that the Celtics were on the come up still, and Giannis just started making his impact going deeper into the playoffs.
KD went there, and Kyrie went there, and now James Harden went there.
Do you notice? All those 2 of those guys that you mentioned were in the West. My guy came West.
Yeah.
They went East.
Okay. You think they're running?
I don't know what they're doing.
it.
I don't know what they're doing.
Huh.
I don't know what they're doing. I'm just telling you what my guy did.
Come on, Shannon. We all know your guy went out west, not really to win. He went out west for the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Come on, man. Ain't nobody follow him out there. The Lakers were missing on so many free agents. Kawhi Leonard didn't want to sign there after LeBron went there, and also Paul George. So, miss me with that, Shannon.
Because you said my guy was ducking and dodging.
He was chasing Michael B. Jordan to Hollywood. That's what he
Hey, Skip it, nailed it right on the head. That's exactly what he was doing. Come on. You see that Space Jam movie coming.
was doing. And if he could get AD here, he'd have a shot. And in the bubble, he got a shot.
And you guys remember that I Promise School by LeBron James? Isn't it perfect timing that it was built right when his contract expired with Cleveland so he can make his way to Hollywood and at the same time won't catch any backlash from the Cleveland fans because he built a school? So it is what it is.
And I believe it was the luckiest path to a finals you will ever find, ever, because they even dodged the Clippers.
No, they didn't
They
dodge
dodged the Clippers.
Skip. They didn't dodge the Clippers. The Clippers had the same opportunities that the Lakers had. They didn't play more games. They played less games because they got beat. They gagged, Skip.
It was the bubble. Half of them didn't even show up on time.
Let me ask you a question.
How long?
Shannon is right there. The Clippers, it's their fault that they lost. They had the same opportunity as the Lakers. And all season, that team has proved mentally that they were 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
Did the Clippers have to quarantine because guys were leaving the bubble?
Let me ask you a question. Had LeBron James and AD blew a 3-1 lead and they had double-digit leads in all the time, would you have chalked it up to the bubble or would you have said they choked?
Well, they
That's a good point by Shannon. We all know the answer to that.
so
No, don't do that. No,
I
don't
don't
be
know.
like that.
I'd have to see how it unfolded.
Skip,
The Clippers dominated every game. They were up by 12, then 19, then 15 in 3 straight closeout games.
Okay.
Yeah, but come on, Skip. It doesn't mean that they were going to dominate during the playoffs when the pressure was on.
They showed you. Las Vegas kept favoring them by higher numbers than your team was favored when you got to face them in the conference
that's
final.
Oh, Skip mentioning the Las Vegas odds. Remember, I told you, check out the Las Vegas odds right now with the Brooklyn Nets. They jumped up to number 2. And check it out what it was before the James Harden trade. So Vegas already knows something.
I'm saying. So if the situation were exactly the same, the Lakers were up by 16, 19, and 12, blowing a 3-1 lead, would you have said it was because of the bubble or would you have said it was because they choked? A simple answer, Skip.
Okay, would the Lakers have been coming in and out of the bubble and not want to be there?
Hold on. First of all, once they got there, nobody left again. Once they
There definitely was a lack of leadership issue last season with the Clippers. Because with the Lakers, you know, especially last season with LeBron, that was not happening because all these guys, they were pretty much all in. And as we come to find out that Kawhi Leonard was showing up late to team flights, getting all types of preferential treatment, he just set a bad precedent. And I'm pretty sure this season he's going to correct a lot of those mistakes.
got there, nobody left.
For the Clippers?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? They were in and out like crazy. Montrez left. Lou Williams left. You nicknamed him Lemon Pepper Lou.
Yeah, also.
They had to quarantine. They didn't play together.
Okay, what about Avery Bradley not coming? What about Avery Bradley?
Okay.
You said we weren't going to be able to do anything in the bubble because we lost Avery Bradley.
Well, I didn't say that.
Avery Bradley hit those 7 threes in March. That's what you said. You said that.
I don't think it was 7, but it was.
And that Avery Bradley situation kind of proved that the Lakers did earn that championship because they had to make a lot of adjustments on the defensive end. And as we've seen in the bubble, their defense was pretty much suffocating.
5.
Yeah.
That was the Avery Bradley Memorial game. And that was the first game you won against the Clippers, who had cleaned you out
Okay,
twice.
and guess what?
Opening night and Christmas Day.
And we never played, and Avery Bradley didn't come. But we in the first game in the bubble between the Clippers and the Lakers, who won that game?
You won that game.
And what did we do?
The Clippers didn't want to be there.
So now they didn't want to be there.
Right?
Nobody wanted to be there, Skip. First of all, everybody keeps saying how mentally tough. And they said, we don't want to go back to the bubble, to not have family, to not have friends. Nobody wants to do. Everybody except Skip Bayless said that was the most mentally challenging thing that they'd had to do in basketball. But now Skip said, oh, because LeBron won it, it wasn't that difficult. But had somebody else won it.
I give him high credit. He kept them together in the bubble. But he smelled blood.
But hold on, Skip.
Did LeBron ever say, I don't feel like I should be here? My heart's not in it because I need to be with Black Lives Matter or whatever? Did he say that?
Name the two teams that when Kenosha happened that says, okay, let's.
LeBron didn't say that because he knew with the league that they really needed to finish that bubble and collect the rest of that revenue. The league is not in a good position right now to pretty much ignore their TV partners and cancel everything. A lot of their TV partners, in particular ESPN, are struggling, and the league had an obligation to finish their end of the contract and collect the revenue that they lost. And at the same time, the league is in the middle of negotiations for the next TV deal. So it was understood and passed down to LeBron to make sure that the rest of the players know that this bubble has to happen.
Okay. Name the two teams.
And then what happened? That was then 2 hours later, what happened in LeBron's room?
LeBron and Chris Paul got on a call with former President Obama, and they had a conversation. He said you could do more, you do better down there, keeping the focus on it. And when they came back, they said, okay, we're going to do this.
Now I'm wondering who called President Obama. Now Shannon is alluding that it was CP3 and LeBron James, but I'm doubting it. Somebody made a call. Somebody higher up definitely made a call to Obama, because he was almost on that phone call the next day, like almost on demand. And that's Obama. You got to go through a few different channels. So whoever had connections to him, for him to show up and dedicate his time to convincing these guys to negotiate with the owners a truce to come back on the court, it's definitely something to be looked at. But I'm wondering who definitely gave him a call. I don't believe it was LeBron James and CP3.
But Skip, don't do this. Now you keep telling me. I'm confused now. Damn. And I think the hell I got a degree and everything. Went to school. I was pretty good in school. I wasn't great. I was pretty good though.
I thought you told me you were no good in school.
I was okay, Skip. You keep telling me LeBron James is the most mentally fragile superstar in the history of sports. Yet he just endured the most mentally challenging season in sports. And now, because
we're talking about the last seconds of big playoff games.
I don't think LeBron James is mentally fragile at all. He's actually mentally strong, because this is a nuance that we have to look at for the next upcoming superstars when they come into the NBA, especially guys on Kobe's level, Jordan's level, LeBron's level, Magic, any other superstar that's going to be the face of the league. One mental hurdle that they're going to have to come over, that LeBron James is pretty much the first guy to really deal with, is the mental hurdle of social media and instant criticism. And it's going to be 24/7. The next guy has to operate within that world. And we've seen how Michael Jordan reacted when he got criticism and his father passing away and the media coming down on his gambling habits. We all seen what resulted out of that. He retired. And Michael Jordan quite a few times had mentioned how if he was in today's climate, he would actually retire earlier. So we have to give our props to LeBron James, because today's criticism is almost instantly, and they can see it in real time in their timeline through Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you're on.
That's when he is the mentally weakest. As we started to see in the 2011 finals. Do you remember those?
Yeah, you can go back to that 2011 finals, but this is what we know. And nobody has more playoff buzzer beaters. Nobody has more game shots with 10 seconds on the clock.
He's played like 300 more games than anybody else
and
has.
Shouldn't he have failed? I mean, come on now.
He has failed far more than anybody has.
He should. Michael Jordan had a commercial.
Nobody has missed more late-game free throws than LeBron James.
So now it's going back to free throw.
He is a disaster at the late-game free throw line. Mental problems.
LeBron James does have his flaws, but mentally, I'm telling you, the next guy up, it's going to be very difficult for him to even have half the career that LeBron James has had, especially being the face of the league.
More late game shots. Yes or no?
He's hit what, 7 in what's he played? 19 years now.
He played 18.
Well, he's going on.
Okay.
Yep.
How many Michael hit?
Well, he's already. What's he played? 350 more games than Michael.
I don't know. I don't count the games. I just make LeBron don't count games. He make the games count.
Did LeBron ever walk off at Utah with a Game 6 buzzer beater to just close?
No, he wasn't in the West at that point in time. But he did walk off against Orlando. He did walk off against Indiana. He did walk off against Toronto. He did walk off and walk it off.
Yeah, he walked right out of that Orlando series in games 4, 5, and 6, as usual.
Yeah, these guys love trolling each other. It's crazy, man. They're right on cue. Both of them are bringing up really good points. I mean, look at Skip with the counter attack with that Orlando series against Dwight Howard. And Shannon, Jesus Christ, he memorized all of LeBron's buzzer beaters against random teams. Like, Jesus Christ, he memorized LeBron's buzzer beater against Indiana? Shit.
And again, it was cakewalk time against those Pacers and those Raptors featuring DeMar DeRozan.
Oh,
stop it.
So in other words, KD might get.
Once again, Skip saying DeMar DeRozan, stop it. He's mentioning the weakness in the landscape of that Eastern Conference. Like I said, that Toronto Raptors team, they're really a good team. Is that their leader just wasn't as strong. And we've seen just that one little switch of transferring DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard turned that team into a different monster.
Doing to play the Pacers this year, right? Is it going to be a cakewalk? He might get an opportunity to play some of these other Toronto. Is it going to be a cakewalk?
Yep.
And the notion that did you keep saying that series that people at home, that series that he's telling you about, Orlando, LeBron James averaged 38, 8, and 8. And boy, he was terrible.
Came apart.
It came apart.
Go look at 4, 5, and 6 and see what happened.
He should average all those points because LeBron James has the ball in his hands 24/7. It's crazy how Shannon had the stats of those games right away. Jesus Christ.
Get the numbers. Go look at the numbers in 4, 5, and 6. 38, 8, and 8. 38, 8, and 8. And he was terrible. Man, I sure wish. How many guys you think would like a stat line like that in a playoff game?
Forget the stat line, Shannon. You got to win the fucking series. Come on, man.
Then go look at against Boston the next year, which was his last year, the first time around in Cleveland, and see what happened in games 4, 5, and 6.
And then go to.
All right. These two guys, man, they're going to be trolling each other all day about who's better, and especially about LeBron. But it is what it is. We'll see how the Brooklyn Nets respond in their first 10 games to see who's going to make the sacrifice and how well oiled this machine could really look. But right now, the spotlight is taken away from the Lakers quite a bit because it was pretty much a consensus that they were going to repeat as NBA champions. And as we've seen with the Vegas odds, the Nets jumped up a few spots to number 2. And the Lakers, of course, are going to have to reevaluate some of the firepower that they have on their team, especially with Kyle Kuzma and Wesley Matthews. They're going to have to do something to perhaps get Bradley Beal on this team so they could compete offensively with the Brooklyn Nets. So until next time, you guys stay safe. Peace.